Hi, everyone. I'm sorry you're all mute, but I can see you and I'm waving hello. Welcome. I'm so happy to see so many Jennifer Weiner fans here tonight, and we have more coming in, I'm sure, in the next couple of minutes. We are expecting a lot of people here, which is really fantastic. So we're going to have a great book club discussion. But first, let me tell you who we are, if I may. I'm Claudia Copwin, and I'm the founder of the event series Long Island Lit Fest, which brings audiences and best-selling authors together for virtual talks and live talks as well when we can. And we recently partnered with a fantastic 1-800-Flowers.com brand, Cheryl's Cookies. It's a 40-year-old company that bakes handcrafted frosted cookies using buttercream and other quality, amazing ingredients. And I've got mine right here, and I've been eating them. I hope you all have yours. And everyone should have received their Cheryl's cookies by now, actually. And if you haven't, you will, I'm sure. And Cheryl's has also sent cookies to our guests of honor. As many of you know, Jennifer Weiner is the New York Times best-selling author of 17 books, including Big Summer, Mrs. Everything, the children's book, The Littlest Bigfoot, and an essay collection, Hungry Heart, Adventures in Life, Love, and Writing, among many others. A graduate of Princeton University and contributor to the New York Times opinion section, Jennifer lives with her family in Philadelphia. Visit her online at jenniferweiner.com, but we are so lucky to have her with us tonight for conversation and cookies about her latest book, That Summer. So please share in welcoming with me Jennifer Weiner. Thrilled to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. I can feel the love. I can hear the cookies crunching.
That's great. So before we begin the conversation, we have a few housekeeping items that I want to go over. We have a limited number of signed book plates by Jennifer. I think you can see that. So if anybody wants one, you can adhere it to the front of your book, like I did right here. If you would like one, please email us at lilitfest@gmail.com, and we're happy to send them to you. And I'm going to chat with Jennifer for a bit. So if you'd like to see others in this event, please set your Zoom on gallery mode so you can see other faces. As you know, you're all on silent right now, but in a while you're going to get to hold up your hand emoji or type in a question in the comment section. And Kasha will try to get to as many of you as possible, because this is a book club after all. And now we're ready to begin. So thank you so much for being here, Jennifer. We know this has been a really tough time for you. Since your mom passed away, I was so heartbroken to see your posts about it. And also then your father-in-law, I believe, has passed away. And how have you been holding up?
Well, May was brutal, I will tell you. And my husband and I just keep looking at each other and saying, June has to be better, doesn't it? My mom had a very short illness. She was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in early March and died 9 weeks later. So it was just like very, very quickly. And she died on Mother's Day, which was like a massive flex. Like, me and my siblings were just like, okay, Fran, like, maybe you wanted us to get that first Mother's Day without you out of the way quickly. Right. But it's so hard. And I'm trying to just be grateful for all of the years that my daughters had with her, and that I have so many pictures, like I'm so grateful we're living in the time of iPhones, where you can just like have your camera out all the time and have like pictures and pictures and pictures and videos. And my mom had a granddaughter that was born during the pandemic who she hadn't met yet, who was in Los Angeles. And so my brother flew with the baby, and my mom got to hold the baby and say hello to her. And it was it was a lot. But I mean, it's the circle of life. My daughter graduated a couple of weeks after that and went to prom with, and is going off to college in the fall. So I feel like I have sunrise, sunset from Fiddler on the Roof, just basically playing in a constant loop
Yes.
in my mind. But thank
Yes.
you very, very much for
Absolutely. So I'm glad to hear there are happy times happening now and coming up, and particularly, the great success of the book, which is your 15th novel, what an amazing achievement.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sometimes I just look at this stack of books and I can barely believe it myself. It's crazy.
It really is. I'm so curious, what's the most common question you've been asked so far on this book tour about that summer?
Well, the question that every author gets, and the question that I get with every single book is, where did you get the idea for this? Like, where do you get your ideas? And I generally say Target, because they have everything at Target. And I don't ever generally know how to answer that question, because there isn't an easy answer. I haven't met any author who can answer that question easily, because for most of us, it's something we heard. And then that mixes in with something we read, which mixes in with something we've been thinking about for years, which meets up with something that happened to us in our childhood. And that's the process. However, with that summer, there actually was an event in my life that I can point to, which is I was getting another Jennifer Weiner's emails for a while.
No way.
Okay, so there are other women named Jennifer Weiner, and I know that because one of them got to Instagram before I did, so she got to be at Jennifer Weiner, and I am at Jennifer Weiner Writes. So there's other Jennifer Weiners in the world, and I was getting emails for one of them, and I was getting invited to her tennis tournaments and her progressive dinners, and I was getting notices about her carpools. And I was thinking to myself, her life sounds a little more interesting than mine does. She was out in California, and I don't play tennis. And so it got me thinking, and this happened years ago. So it just got me thinking of the idea of women with the same names, and women who have very similar email addresses, and women whose paths cross because of that. And because they have the same names, they're obviously going to be in some ways reflections of one another. Each of them is going to look at the other one and sort of see choices that she didn't make, paths that she didn't take, maybe things that she wishes she had. So I knew it was going to be that kind of story. And honestly, the grain of sand that became the pearl that is this book was, what if a woman started getting someone else's emails? And then I started thinking about, okay, who is this woman? What's going on with her? And I had read that article that went viral a couple of years ago about why Generation X women can't sleep, right? And it talked about we are the generation that's sandwiched between aging parents and young kids, because we all waited to get married till we were in our 30s. So we're chasing after children, we're dealing with aging parents, and there's just so many choices. And so that was one of the things that I thought about too, is one of these women is going to be really struggling with the notion of choices. Both of them are to a certain extent, but one of them especially, the one who's sort of chosen this very conventional path of marriage and motherhood and life in the suburbs and a small business and a little volunteering, and is sort of looking at her choices and looking at her life and thinking to herself, I don't know if this is all going the way that it should. I know it's not feeling the way that I want it to. So that's the answer that I give people. I tend to give it a little more quickly, but that's the answer.
I'm glad you brought up the email thing, because I was going to ask you this later, but we actually had a question from someone who said, Jody Feldman, who wanted to know how did she get the idea for Daisy and Diana to meet through an email address typo. And she said that happened to me a few years ago, and now she has a pen pal in the UK who occasionally forwards her messages that she received that were meant for her. She said, I'm Jody Feldman in New Jersey, and she's Joanne Feldman in London. So it actually does happen.
Yes, I think it happens a lot. And I mean, everyone is curious, if meet somebody with my same name, I'm going to want to know, like, what is your life like? Where do you live? What do you do? Are you married? Do you have children? Like, what's going on with you, sister?
Right.
And so that was the impulse. That was where that piece of the story came from.
Right. Okay. So both Dianas don't finish, one of them doesn't go to college, one of them doesn't finish college.
Right.
They don't follow their paths that, the sort of like the paths that they were thinking of going. Daisy marries so young, Diana lives in virtual isolation for a long time.
Yes.
So do we blame Hal for the most part for their paths?
We blame the patriarchy, I think. I mean, I want people to know that this is like, it's not going to feel like homework when you read this book, I hope. However, it does deal with some serious stuff. And again, where do you get your ideas? So I'm sending a daughter to college this fall, right? Which, of course, on the heels of all of this Me Too stuff, has just made me think really, really hard about the world that I am sending her into, right? What is the world like? Has it changed significantly since I was 18 years old and sort of venturing out of my house and being, hashtag independent woman for the first time? Have we being my generation, have we done enough of the work that things have gotten significantly better? So without giving too much away, I can tell you that both of my Dianas have been harmed by men. One of them, it's the sort of quotidian, everyday, maybe it's street harassment, maybe it's a boss who gets a little handsy or doesn't take you really seriously. Maybe it's the way that everybody seems to expect less of you than maybe they would if you were a man. Stuff that she just sort of accepts as the price of doing business while female. She doesn't think about it too much. She doesn't think of herself as a victim. She doesn't think of herself as angry. She just kind of figures like, this is what it is, And the other woman has been harmed in just about the worst way that a woman can be harmed, and really had her life derailed because of it, and has to rebuild a life that looks different than what she thought it was going to be. And I have friends, and I'm sure that most of the women who are watching this and hearing my voice right now have friends who have survived something like that. We've all had experiences somewhere on the spectrum, from the mildest to the most severe, of just the damage that men do to women when we live in the world. And I wanted to write a book about that. I wanted to write a book about the way that trauma shapes women's lives, the different ways women respond to it, whether you face it head on or you just try to ignore it, whether you push it down or you pull it up. And I wanted these women's intersection to be built on the foundation of that kind of harm. And there's there's a man they have in common. And then they have to deal with this question of like, what does justice look like? And
that's one of my later questions to you,
okay,
actually.
So we'll get there. We'll get there.
We'll get there. But also, I'm hoping a lot of the people that are here have actually read the book. So I don't want to do any spoiler alerts, but let's hope everybody or most people have already read it. So let's go back to Hal. I know, so He represents the patriarchy. Why did you decide to give him a whole chapter?
Well, I guess the answer is, like, if you're going to write a villain, there has to be a backstory, right? If somebody is just sort of a mustache twirling bad guy and there's never an explanation and you can't place him in a context, it doesn't work, in my opinion, as a reader. It's not very satisfying. And so I didn't want to give Hal excuses. I didn't want to let him off the hook in any way. But I guess that I was thinking, I know that I was thinking about Brett Kavanaugh when I wrote that chapter. And I just remember his indignation and his rage, like that red-faced, spittle-flecked, I am so angry that I am being accused of this garbage rage. And I'm watching this guy and I'm thinking to myself, he comes from a world where he's been told his whole entire life in 1,000 different ways that the world and everything in it is his for the taking. I mean, this is somebody who comes from so much privilege because of race, because of gender, because of religion, because of economic privilege, somebody who comes from wealth and sort of would look at a woman like Diana as like a townie and someone who you can sort of use, basically, and I don't mean for that to excuse Hal, but I wanted to understand where a man like that comes from, what his life has been like, what has shaped him, what has brought him to the point that he can do the things he does and just not think about them. And I really do believe that, like, to men like that, women are not, or certainly at least women like Diana, are not entirely completely human the way that he is and the way he believes other men to be. That was a bit of a speech.
No, it was good, because I was wondering, like, why does he get like his own chapter? Like, what am I going to learn from reading about him? And it was basically, I kind of, knew, what his deal was. Mm-hmm. So it was, I was wondering, like, why he got, but I get it. Now that you explained it, and he doesn't really redeem himself much, right?
No, I mean, because I don't, well, okay. I mean, but here's the thing, like, when I got to the ending, when I, the author, had to answer the question of what do we do with these men, which I believe is a question that we as a society are either currently grappling with or are going to have to face, right? Because a lot of guys have been, quote unquote, Me Too'd, right? They've been accused, they've, been found guilty either in the court of public opinion or in an actual court. They have done their time either in jail or social media purgatory, and then they come back. And we're starting to see this already. Like, Louis C.K. is back. Jeffrey Toobin, not quite the same kind of offense, but is back. And I'm wondering, and this is something that I think a lot about, because there are going to be more and more of these men. And I think that, like, we can't just lock them up forever and throw away the key, like, unless they're Harvey Weinstein, in which case maybe you can. But most of them are going to come back. And I think that, Louis C.K. was the one I was thinking about, like one of the earliest guys sort of accused of Me Too stuff. And basically it was one woman and, oh, shut up. She's a liar. She's crazy. She's jealous. She wants me, whatever. And then it was 2 women, and then it was 10 women, and then it was 20 women. And then it was clear that, indeed this had happened. And he said, yes, indeed this happened. And he went away, left some work, lost some jobs, went away for a year. And then he came back and started doing comedy specials in clubs again, and did not do what I would think of as the work of reparative justice, right?
Right, he almost came back as if nothing had happened.
As if nothing had happened, exactly. And
it is infuriating. Like,
yes, it is infuriating. Yes, and so it's like, okay, if we can't lock these guys up, can we ask something of them? Like, in that scene where, like, Daisy is talking about, well, what if he went back to his prep school and he talked to the boys and he explained, and Diana's like, yes,
that's never going to happen.
It's never going to happen. However, I wrote the ending of that summer, like, I'm going to say at least 5 different times, 5 different ways. And it was everything from Daisy shoves Hal off the stairs and he dies a horrible broken neck death, to, he says, well, I guess I'll go to counseling and I'm going to figure out why I did this, and I'm going to be better, and I'm going to do the work. Like, I'm going to whatever the work turns out to be, but I don't know what the work is going to be. And so I honestly, I mean, I wanted to leave readers thinking about it because I am still thinking about it because I don't know the answer to it. And I think that it has to be case by case. And I think that there has to be some nuance to it because, and this is another reason I wrote the Hal chapter, right? These men are our brothers and our sons and our fathers and our husbands in some cases. And what do we do with them? You know, they are transgressors, but they are also someone's person, right? So what do we do?
Right.
I don't know.
Well, there's no black and white. There's no one has an answer, I don't think. And we're just, playing it by ear, basically. And one of the things that I really found interesting about the book was when you hear about a Louis C.K. or someone in the spotlight and who has victimized so many women, I don't necessarily think about their families and their children and how the Me Too outing is going to affect those people. So I found that I love that you brought that into the book. At one point I believe Diana was worried about how is this going to affect Daisy and her daughter.
And her daughter, right. I mean, my God, it would be so much easier if these men just, if the instant they were accused, they just sort of lost their moms and their wives and their daughters. But like, that's not what happened. I mean, like Harvey Weinstein had a young wife and like, I believe 5-year-old twins, if I'm remembering correctly, Matt Lauer had, a wife and teenage children, I think, who are like probably reading about this in the tabloids along with the rest of us. Like, there's so much damage to so many people whose only mistake was being in the way, and I think about that a lot when I ask myself the question of what does justice look like with these men?
Right. Well, let's switch gears a little bit because I have a lot of questions and I know everybody has questions. I wanted to talk a little bit about Diana and I was wondering what might her life had been like had she not been attacked. Like, since you created her character, do you think she would have become her alter ego, this high-powered world traveler with the cool clothes? What would have become of her, do you think?
I think that she would have been a writer. Like, I think that was the dream for her. She was a mother's helper to this woman who was an English professor and a novelist. And I think that was her dream. And she lost that dream. She lost her hold on it when the bad thing happens, which I think, that felt very true to me. And when I had women who had been raped and assaulted themselves read the book, like they said that felt true to them too. Like if you're that age and you're just standing on the cusp of who you're going to become, and something like that happens, you lose that version of yourself. Right. So that's what I think would have happened with Diana. And I guess I wanted to give her a life that felt rich and rewarding and happy in many ways, but I didn't want it to feel like pat. I didn't want it to feel like happily ever after, or like, oh, and then, after a couple of years of moping, then she just gets what she was going for, because I don't believe that's what happens. So she would have been a writer, I think, had that not been.
And then one of my favorite characters is Beatrice.
Oh my God.
I just loved her. She just marches to the beat of her own drum. And one of the questions that was, in my mind the whole time she popped up in the story is, where did she get the courage to be herself? Well, to be this person who didn't care, dressed the way she wanted, said whatever came to her mind, and was so brutally honest. And, was she based on someone in your own life?
So I have daughters. I have an 18-year-old and I have a 13-year-old. And I think that what I did with Beatrice was take the best and bravest and most outspoken parts of my daughters, which is a lot of them, especially my daughter Lucy, the 18-year-old. I like took all of that and I gave it to Beatrice. And then I sort of like supercharged her a little. I wanted her to stand in contrast to Daisy and Diana because I really believe that this generation of young women is possibly going to be the generation that saves us. Like, I have so much faith that these girls have the courage of their convictions and that they have the tools. I think that social media has given them a lot of the tools to speak their truth and to just sort of go their own way because they can find people like them. Like they know that there's other kids like them out there because they can meet them on TikTok or Snapchat or whatever social media platform is coming next. So yes, Beatrice is very, very much based on my Lucy and Phoebe.
Well, I loved your daughters then. There was a line, I want to read this because there was a line in the book that resonated so much with me as a mom. When Beatrice says to Daisy, "I'm not the kind of daughter you ever wanted." And Daisy felt like so guilty because she had secretly sort of thought that.
Yes.
Have you had comments from mothers, about as on your book tour about that?
I have not, but I think that that's maybe something that, a comment that I get over and over on book tours, like somebody will always come up to me and she'll lean in really close and she'll say, "I love your writing so much. You say the things that I just think." And at first I'm like, "Oh, thank you." And then I think about it, I'm like, I'm not sure that was a compliment. Like, maybe I should just like be keeping my mouth shut a little bit more. But so with that, okay, so I do believe that there are mothers and grandmothers too, who, oh, it's a girl. And to them, that's like, I'm going to have somebody to go get mani-pedis with and go to the ballet with and go have tea with and go shopping with. And that's just not every girl. As I learned to my sorrow, because when I had Lucy, I'm like, yay, like day of beauty and tea at the Four Seasons. And as soon as she could like indicate her displeasure, Lucy was like, no, none of that.
No, Mom, we're not doing that.
No one will be touching my nails. Hang on one second. I'm going to turn my light up. Okay. I'm going to be right back. I'm walking around the corner because it's getting dark. There we go. I want to make sure you guys all can see.
Oh, that's better.
Isn't that so much better?
I can see you.
Yay. So yeah, I mean, and it's not like, it's like unwrapping a present and it's not what you thought was in the box. It's something else wonderful, but you sort of have to get your head around the idea of like, oh, I guess it's not a Birkin bag. I guess it's some other wonderful thing. I think that's it.
So can we talk about the taxidermy mice? How in the world did you come up with that?
I don't know. I was thinking about like, what is the like weirdest, most off-putting thing that this child could do, right?
Pretty weird.
Yes. And I talked to Lucy and Phoebe about it. And I said, like, I want to like give her like a really specific aesthetic, right? And they both said like cottagecore. And I'm like, I don't even know what cottagecore is. So I had to go find out. And, it's this whole thing of like floaty dresses and gardens and cottages covered with ivy and fairies and all of that stuff. And then I don't even know where the taxidermy came from, but as soon as I started like looking it up, like there's taxidermy TikTok people. Like if you want to watch somebody, hand to God, if you want to watch somebody stuff a mouse in real time, you can go to TikTok and see that. So, I'm just like, this is perfect. And of course it's like going to gross her mother out because like she's keeping the mice in the freezer and blah, blah, blah. So yeah.
Oh, and there was so much detail when, about it. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't actually stuff a mouse myself, but I believe that I could.
So we'll just touch on this and then we're going to open it up to everybody because I know everybody has so much to say. I want to talk about Michael, the bear, who is the anti-Hal. I adored him and, I'm sure a lot of people did. That proposal just brought me to tears. I just loved him. Why did you have him though on the sidelines with Diana's plot? Like, why didn't he participate? Why did he just take a step back and not help her or be there with her when she was doing these things?
I mean, that was another thing that I kind of like rewrote because I had versions where he was like her co-conspirator. I had versions where he was telling her like, don't do this. You're going to get caught. You're going to get in trouble. It isn't worth it. Just forget it and move on.
Right.
And I guess I like had to settle in a place that felt plausible to me. And knowing Michael's character, like he loves Diana so much, but he doesn't want her to get in trouble. And I think I have to believe that like even good men are somewhat conflicted by, I think that maybe there are guys that are thinking, am I going to get in trouble next? Like, I didn't do anything wrong, but what if somebody thought I did? And Michael's not like that, but I guess I was just hoping for some nuance and some tension too, because if he sort of threw in his lot with Diana, then she sort of doesn't have anything to worry about. But if he doesn't, if he is, as you said, on the sidelines, she has to sort of, that's another piece of it for her as she's wondering about what to do and what is the right thing to do.
Okay. Well, I have other questions, but I'm sure everybody else does too. So I'm gonna throw it over to Kasha, who's gonna handle our virtual mic, if you will, and do our Q&A with everybody. So Kasha, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kasha. So I'll be taking your questions, kind of leading this portion like Claudia mentioned. Thank you, Claudia and Jennifer. That was really interesting and a great kickoff to this discussion. So I'll start by taking questions, whoever comes first, but if you want to go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call on you and then you can unmute yourself. You're able to raise your hand by going to the reactions, which is on the bottom right hand of the screen. And you click on that and it says raise hand. So go ahead and do that if you have a question and I'll go through. If you don't want to actually vocally ask your question, go ahead and write it here in the chat and I will go through there. All right, so let's see. Jennifer Rico, is that a hand or you're just excited with the thumbs up? Oh, you're gonna have to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
I have two questions. The first one's kind of a two-parter. Have you ever had a character that lived in your head, you went to put it in one book and you felt like it wasn't the right character for that book and you saved it for a later book?
Wow. Let me think for a minute. I don't think that's ever happened. I mean, what I've had is like, I've had sort of secondary characters that I loved so much that I'm like, I want to write an entire book about like Beatrice, for example, but I can't think of anybody who hasn't like fit in the book that I'm working on at that moment.
Okay. And my second question is, if you can commandeer another writer's character and keep writing it, do you have a character or an author's book that you would like to continue on or take in a different direction?
Oh my God, that is such a great question. Okay, so one of my favorite books is my friend Curtis Sittenfeld's book, An American Wife. And so Alice, who is married to the president and sort of has this like moment of reckoning at the end, like I would have loved to continue her story and her daughter's story as well. I mean, I love that book so much. And if you guys haven't read it, it's, loosely based on Laura Bush's life. And it basically asks the question, how does a smart kind of liberal progressive librarian end up married to this like dopey Texan politician? And she moves everything to Wisconsin. So like there's sausage and beer and stuff like that. But it's that kind of question. And it's so well done. And I don't know if I could do Alice justice, but I would surely try.
Thank you.
Those were great questions. Thank you.
Great. And now let's go to Sherry or Shari. What? Go ahead and.
Hi. Oh my God, I'm so excited right now. It took a half an hour to get in, so I'm a little late to the party, but I'm so excited I'm here. You lately have been posting the most amazing things online about how your weight and how fit you are and how you're starting to be comfortable in your skin. And I need you to know that it's resonating with me. Every Instagram post, every Facebook post. And I'm really trying to channel this for myself. I'm recuperating from knee surgery. So I sometimes feel like I'm not able to do, and I'm not the biggest workout, but whatever you're doing, please keep doing, because it's helping people like me look at their lives a little bit differently.
I'm so glad. That makes me so happy, because like I feel that was like a gift my mother gave me, and I want to pay.
And your mother sounded like an amazing woman. I am so sorry for your loss, but I really loved learning about her through you. So that being said, I also love hearing about your family and your daughters and everything. And I've seen you make challah with them and all that. Do they help you with the writing? Do you ever bounce your ideas off of them in terms of maybe character development or things like that?
I do. Especially when I'm writing a teenage girl, because like I am a long way from my own life as a bat mitzvah, and I'm getting farther away every day. So I feel like I have to check in with them about like, what are kids saying? What are they listening to? How are they feeling about this thing or that thing? And, not that my daughters have to represent every young person in the world, but I really, really do like getting their perspective. And they're both good readers, and they're both like really smart and really sensitive and really lovely. So, but they're not reading my books yet, which is maybe somebody's next question. Like, have they read your books? And I'm like, no, because I think that Lucy, my older one, like discovered there was a sex scene pretty early on in Good in Bed. And she's like, I'm never reading anything you write ever again. And I'm like, that is okay with me, friend.
It's so funny. So it's interesting because my son, I have an 11th grader, so a 16-year-old, apparently he knows you as well. He was excited when he saw this because he reads your nonfiction for his Nonfiction Friday class in high school. So he has apparently picked some of your writing and used it in his Nonfiction Friday. So I thought that was really cool also.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing. I'm so grateful. That's so cool.
It's so cool, right? He's like, wait, I know that author. I've used her for Nonfiction Friday. Who knew? So thank you for everything you do. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks.
All right. Anyone else have a hand raised? Otherwise, we'll go to this question. So we have a question too about kind of next books. Would you ever do a book about a sequel about Beatrice? And then do you have an upcoming book that you're working on?
Okay, so would I do a sequel about Beatrice? Yes, 1,000 times yes. But I have to kind of figure out like where she's off to next. I mean, we kind of left her in the ocean paddling into the sun. So I have to figure out like where she's going with her life, and then like pick her up at an interesting moment, at a moment where she wants something that she doesn't have. Because I think that's like the most important question for any character in a novel is like, what does this woman want? Like, what is missing from her life? And how is she going to try to get it? Like, how am I going to help her to get this thing in 400 pages? So yes, I would write about Beatrice some more. And what I am working on now is the third book in what I am in my own head very grandiosely calling my Cape Cod trilogy. And it is going to be called The Last Summer. And a friend of mine is just like, do you have a new book out? And I'm like, yeah, it's called That Summer. And she looks at me, she's like, didn't you have a book out last year with summer in the title? And I'm like, yes, last summer was Big Summer, and this summer is That Summer, and next summer is The Last Summer. And then she just kind of looked at me and said, like, are you going on to a new season after that? And I said, yes, I hope so. So that the last summer, for those of you who've read Big Summer and That Summer, there's a house that shows up in both of the books. It's the house where the wedding that was supposed to take place in Big Summer. It is the house where the Levy Weinberg family lives, where Diana is working as a mother's helper in That Summer. And in the third book, the matriarch who owns the house, the woman who is Diana's employer in That Summer in the 80s, we're going to see her in 2022 as a grandmother. The twins that Diana babysat for are now in their 50s. So we're going to meet them as adults. We're going to see their children. And
Wow.
basically what has happened is Veronica Levy, the matriarch of this family, has decided she's going to sell the house. Like, it's been the site of many happy family gatherings and many happy occasions. And now she's ready to let it go. She's going to gather the family together one more time and then put the house on the market. And what happens is her granddaughter decides to get married and says, you know, can I get married at the house? I love it there. It's my favorite place. And so there's going to be a wedding and the whole family gets together and there's all kinds of confusion and misunderstandings and mixed identities and people seeing things that aren't what they thought. So hopefully it's going to be like a very lighthearted, fun, you know, things go wrong at a wedding over a long weekend kind of book. That is my hope. But things have a way of surprising me. You know, when I think something is going to be fun and lighthearted, the next thing I know, I'm writing about like sexual trauma, but who knows?
Hey, and Regina, I saw you raised your hand.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hey, hi.
Hi. So I have two quick questions, and you sort of touched on them before. So the first question is, in your past books, would you ever revisit or continue the story of Rachel and Andy from Who Do You Love? I just adore. And I would love to see what their fourth act is when they get together again.
Right? These people who keep missing each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a really good question. So Rachel and Andy, very, very, very loosely based on me and my husband, who we dated in our early 20s, then we dated in our late 20s, then I married somebody else and I had 2 kids, and then we got divorced and Bill was still single because he was waiting for me, or so I tell myself, and then we finally got married. So yeah, I mean, I do think about Rachel and Andy sometimes, and I do think that that would be a really interesting story to pick up at some point down the road. So thank you for that encouragement.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is totally off topic from the book. Because you love Cape Cod so much, I'm also a Cape Cod person too. I live in upstate New York and I like East Ham and the National Seashore. What is your favorite seafood, or how do you like your lobster rolls when you go out there?
So I go to the Outer Cape. I'm in Truro, which is practically in Provincetown, but I spend a lot of time in Eastham. I know it very well. My mom's wife has a home there, so no Eastham. Okay, so I like cold lobster rolls from Arnold's with the onion rings, with like this giant pile of onion rings. I love the National Seashore, and my favorite beach is Long Nook Beach in Truro. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's so picturesque. It's like every time I am standing at the top of the dune and looking at it, I feel like I'm standing in a postcard, and it's really amazing. But it's such a special place. And every time I meet somebody who's been there, I'm so happy. Like, I just want to invite the whole world and let them all see how beautiful it is. So I'm really, really glad it's your place too.
Perfect. And then we have a question here from Carolyn in the chat. And we discussed this just a little bit in the earlier section of the conversation, but this one's a little bit more explicit. So does Hal end up losing Daisy and or Beatrice, or does he just go along with his life still being a lawyer and a dad and never acknowledging the full extent of what he did?
Okay. So I specifically left that. I didn't fill in that blank because I wanted readers to be able to sort of bring their own judgment to bear and be able in their imaginations to do what they saw as right with Hal. Because again, like, I just could not decide. Like, I don't think things stay the same for him. Like, that much I can say. And I think that if he and Daisy end up staying married, it's a very different marriage than it was at the beginning. And if Beatrice still speaks to him after learning about what's happened, I mean, I wonder so much of what that looks like, because again, like, Matt Lauer had a daughter around Beatrice's age, and, you know, who presumably had to listen to all of this stuff about him, like, locking women in his office and raping them, you know? And I don't know how those conversations go. Like, I mean, I could write it 100 different ways. And I guess I just wanted readers to be able to imagine what they saw as justice and to sort of put that there. I don't know, maybe it was a little bit of a dodge, but I just wanted everybody to be able to sort of like fill in that blank for themselves.
And any further questions? Don't be shy.
I actually, if I may, I have one from someone who sent in by email.
Yes, please.
Ariella Emblem wants to know how you came up with the name Emblem Academy. She says, I was so surprised because that is an uncommon last name and rarely heard outside of my family.
I don't know where that came from. And I'll tell you that, like, my editor hated it. And my editor was like, it sounds like a medication. Like, can we change this to something else? But in my head, it was always the Emblem Academy. And I don't know why. You know, I was thinking about like the fancy, I mean, like Andover and Exeter and Choate and Milton and all of those like fancy schmancy prep schools in New England. And then I was thinking about schools here on the main line of Philadelphia, where you've got like Baldwin and Shipley and Episcopal and Friends this and Friends that, because all the private schools here are Quaker schools. I don't know where Emblem came from. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer, but I wish I knew. God.
That's so interesting that you don't know. And that she read the book.
Yes. Well, thanks.
She must have freaked out when she saw the name. How do you come up with the names for your characters and whatnot?
Okay, so the women's, well, there's a couple different answers. Like, if there's a child with a really wonderful name, like Beatrice, probably that was on a list at one point that I was keeping of potential baby names and never got to use. Like, my boy's name was Henry and I never got to use it. So I think I've had some Henrys in different books. And then, okay, so this is a secret, but a lot of my names, especially my last names, come from the Princeton Alumni Weekly, okay? That's my alumni magazine, and it's not quite a weekly. They call it the Princeton Alumni Weekly. I don't know why, but it shows up, and there's always the class notes, right? Where everybody's like, you know, here's who got married, here's who won a prize, here's who had a baby, blah, blah, blah. It is like a treasure trove of WASP names. Like, it is just unimaginable riches. And it's better than a phone book. I mean, I could use a phone book. There are people who do. I have a baby naming book that I sometimes use. If I'm writing about someone born in a specific year, I will frequently like look up the Social Security records of the most popular names for babies of those years. But if there's a cool WASP last name, chances are it is straight out of the Princeton Alumni Weekly.
We won't tell.
Please don't, because nobody else, I've never said that out loud before.
Oh, we have a scoop.
You do, it's true.
Great to know. Kasha, do you have any other questions from anyone?
I don't think so.
I mean, ask me anything. You can ask me about this book. You can ask me about other books. You can ask me about my life. You can ask me about biking. You can ask me about Fran. Like, I'm an open book. I'm here for you guys. Anything you want to know.
Well, until we get another question from the audience, I'd like to ask you something else. So
Yes.
There were a couple of like really chilling moments for me in the book. Early on when we learned Daisy's not her real name and it was changed. And then that the boy watching the rape was Daniel, Rose, and Daisy's brother. My God.
Yeah.
And then also Daisy's mother. What do you think about the generation of women who are, older, who just seem to want to sweep, Me Too accusations under the rug and, not deal with it?
So, not to generalize, but that is something that I have noticed in my own sort of peregrinations across social media. Like, I'm going to use the Jeffrey Toobin example just because it's the most recent. Like, there was a woman on Facebook who I follow who is older than I am, who was just like, I'm so glad he's back. He's the smartest legal analyst that CNN has, and I don't care what he did, and it's nobody's business but his wife's and his kids, right? Which is not something I happen to agree with. I'm just like, is he that invaluable that we have to bring him back again and again and again? Like, isn't there like some really brilliant
Somebody
woman who
else
could have a chance, But
Yeah.
I believe that, and I think about like my Nana's generation where, it was sort of like, what's the big deal? Like, this is just what happens. This is just the way that men are.
Right.
I think that like, or the Aziz Ansari story. Do you guys all remember that? Like Aziz Ansari, there was an article in a magazine about a young woman who had gone on a date with Aziz Ansari, and he had done some stuff that she did not want to happen. And she didn't exactly say stop, but she didn't, she sort of made it clear that what was going on wasn't welcome. And it felt to me like there was a real generational split where there were the older women, again, generalizing, who said, well, is he supposed to be a mind reader? Like, how was he supposed to know what she wanted and didn't want? This is ridiculous. And then there were younger women who were saying, like, there's a huge power differential. I mean, Aziz Ansari is a Hollywood star, and this young woman was a 23-year-old, and he was abusing his power to get something he wanted and ignoring some really obvious cues that he was doing things that this woman did not want done to her. So I think that it's just, everything is context and history and experience. And I think what our own mothers told us, and I think that generation was told by their mothers, that's how men are, and you better be careful. It's your job to protect yourself. It's your job to, dress carefully, not drink too much, not excite them or entice them or whatever, and then there was my generation that was sort of taught, no, it's on them. It's not on us. It's on them to behave. And, it shouldn't matter what we wear. It shouldn't matter how we dance. It shouldn't matter what we drink. It should be their responsibility to behave like responsible citizens. And in terms of Daisy's mother, this is somebody who wanted the best for her daughter, but it was the best as she saw it. Mm-hmm. And in her mind, being married to a powerful man with a good education and a good job was the safest that she could make her daughter. In a world where men hurt women, the smartest, safest thing is to sort of pledge your allegiance and sort of fall under the protection of a powerful man, right? So when Daisy's mother's boyfriend, the gentleman caller, when he says to Daisy, don't be so hard on your mother, she did the best she could. And of course, Daisy doesn't want to hear anything about that. She just found out that her mother knew that her husband had done this terrible thing, that her brother had witnessed it, that they let her marry this guy, that nobody stopped it. Like, she's furious. But yeah. I think that this mother, I think that all mothers want what's best for their kids, whether the daughters end up seeing it that way or not. But yeah, she was interesting to write, let me tell you.
Yeah, I mean, reading her responses was made me angry, but also sad.
Yeah, right.
You know, sad for her daughter. Who,
Right. And just, that her husband died and sort of left her holding the bag. And she was
Mhm.
thinking to herself, well, that's never going to happen to Daisy.
Yeah.
She's going to be safe. And safe to her, I think, meant financially secure, maybe to the exclusion of other more important things. But that belief was shaped by her own history, as all of our beliefs are shaped by our own history and experiences.
Right. Well, speaking of Daisy, let's talk about cooking.
Oh,
Are
Claudia,
you a cook? And how did you? What?
sorry,
Yeah.
Claudia,
Wait.
do we have time for one more question from the audience?
Yes,
Oh,
let's
sorry.
backtrack. I take that question back.
Well, we can talk about it, but go ahead, Kasha. Yes.
Jennifer, do you have a question? Jennifer?
Jennifer, you talk in a lot of your books, and even in some of the articles that I've read about you, just about kind of coming into your own skin and feeling comfortable. Can you just talk a little bit about how that experience has been for you? We can think back to some of your beginning characters, and again, just some of the experiences and being the mom of two girls, but you seem to be very comfortable in your own skin now, like you've come into your own, and maybe just talk a little bit about sort of your, I'll call it your butterfly experience.
Oh, I love that. That's so kind. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think that I had sort of like a typical fat girl journey, right? Where I had a lot of years of just hating myself desperately, wanting to change myself, and thinking that if I was 20 or 30 or 40 pounds smaller, everything would be perfect and great and wonderful. And the older I got, the more that I realized that happiness doesn't have a number on a scale or a size inside of a dress. That and that waiting is a bad thing to do, like postponing your happiness until it's 10 pounds from now. I think about my mom. Like, my Nana lived to be 101. And I honestly believed I was going to have my mother around that long, that I would be in my 70s, the way my mom was when she lost her mother. And that wasn't what happened. And what that tells me is, like, none of us know when it's going to be our time, right? And that means that, like, every day, every moment of potential happiness, like, it is our job to, like, grab it with both arms and not care if there are jiggly bits or if maybe we look a little squishy in our swimsuits, right? And the other thing is daughters, like you said. Okay, so I have these two girls, and when Lucy was born, there's a photograph of me holding her when she has basically just, like, emerged from my body. And then there's, like, a picture of me at her first birthday, right? And she's like, Mom, like, were you someplace else that year? And I was not anyplace else, but I just wasn't getting in pictures because I hadn't lost the baby weight and I didn't feel really good about myself. And I just sort of realized, like, my daughter thinks I wasn't there. And in an important way, I wasn't, because I wasn't letting myself be seen, right? And I thought a lot about that, because it's like, how do I square this with my feminism, right? Like, if I believe that women that our worth is defined by our brains, by our choices, by our work, by what we do, by what we say, and how we look is about 110th on that list, like, I got to get in these pictures. Like, no matter how I'm feeling, like, I got to put that bathing suit on. I got to get in the water. I got to be in the pictures. I can't always be the one behind the camera. And I think that's been my journey. And at first it was just a whole lot of fake it till you make it, even when I didn't feel confident. And even when I didn't feel like I wanted to be in the picture, I would make sure that I was. And I feel like now it's just gotten to a point where I just want to, I want to be in the world as much as I possibly can. And I think it's because of losing my mom. I think that like she was in the world so much. She rode her bike and she played tennis and she hiked with my daughters and she taught them how to swim. And I think like, I don't want to lose a minute of that. So I think that's it. And thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, that was a great question. And that's a great place to end on a really positive note. And so I'm sorry that we're out of time. We have, that it went really fast and there was so much to talk about.
It does, right?
Yeah, and I think I speak for everybody. We can't wait for your next novel. And will look for it when it's published. I just want to add, Atria Books, which is Jennifer's publisher, is running an amazing sweepstakes with a whole lot of 1-800-Flowers brands. It's going on right now. And the prizes are just incredible. And it's based on that summer. And so if you want more information on that, on how to enter, please go to longislandlitfest.com. I have all the information on there. And Jennifer, we just can't thank you enough. This was such a great, great time. And this was our first book club with Cheryl's Cookies. And I personally enjoyed it thoroughly. I hope everybody else did as well. And we hope to do more. And thank you again, all. And please, everyone, enjoy your summer.
This was wonderful. Thank you very, very much. Everyone have a great night. Have a wonderful summer.
Thank you.